All right, everyone, welcome. Thank you for joining us here today for our Tag Inspector webinar on Chaos to Calm. Just a general tag management overview. I want to walk through kind of the entire process, all the way from really high level. When we're talking about tags, when we're talking about pixels, what are we talking about? How exactly are those working? And then walking through that entire process of how to really get a good grasp of all the different tags, pixels on your website, how to stay in control of them, and then how to monitor and ensure everything is working as it should be on an ongoing basis, so that calm state lasts for a long time. You don't have to go through the whole audit and everything over and over and over again. To get started, just a little bit of quick background and like general housekeeping. If you have any questions, please drop them into the GoToWebinar area on the side of your screen, and we will get around to those towards the end. About us, Tag Inspector is obviously a tool to help with tag auditing and then ongoing monitoring. It is a product of InfoTrust, and on the InfoTrust side of things, we do web analytics work, tag management, product development. You can see a number of sites that we work with and analyze yearly. And then we also have offices both here in the United States as well as internationally in Dubai. A little bit about myself. My name is Lucas. There is a photo of me. Nice to meet you all. And then I am the Tag Inspector product manager and also do tag management consulting for a number of our clients. Like I mentioned, just from an overall agenda standpoint, we'll start out here first just covering the basics, very ground level tags, how they work, get into a few different strategies for troubleshooting tags on a website. That will feed us directly into tag auditing. From tag auditing, we'll cover some tips in how to create a tag governance policy. So we'll start out with kind of the chaos of what's going on and what are we looking at, walking through the steps to really getting a grip and a good control over everything, putting a policy in place to be able to maintain that moving forward, when to migrate to a tag management system, some tips for doing that, and then how to monitor tags, pixels, and data collection moving forward to ensure that ideal state. And then we'll finish up with just a quick summary and QA for any questions that come up. Like I mentioned, just drop your questions in the side, and more than happy to get to all of them. So to start out, just when we're talking about tags, obviously it's just the snippets of JavaScript that you're placing on your sites or in your tag management system that are collecting information about users, placing cookies, introducing, in some cases, content on a page. But it's those JavaScript snippets that are what we're talking about and what we're trying to troubleshoot. Now, getting into a little bit of just generally how they work. When the browser will go through, and as each page is rendered, the browser will hit each of those snippets of code on the website, and at that point, that code will send up a request. It is within these requests that you can see there on the right-hand side. These are examples of requests that are being sent by tags. Contained within those, if it's something that is collecting information or going back to its respective server to execute some function, is that data that's being collected. So when we start talking about governance and privacy, that's really what we're talking about, is being able to identify, okay, who and where is this data going, and then what is being collected, both from the perspective of what should be happening, what shouldn't be happening, what's allowed, what's not allowed, all that good stuff. Here's an example of one of those specific requests And here I use a Google Analytics example because it is very straightforward in how they display everything. So when Google Analytics, if you have a Google Analytics tag on your site, when someone goes to and renders a page, or when they complete an event, those tags on the page are being fired in that instance and sending back to Google Analytics platform this request. Contained within the request is the query string, and contained within that query string are, on the right hand side there, you can see everything parsed out, and those are the key value pairs for the actual data that's being collected. In terms of troubleshooting tags on a website, now that we have those basics and understand those requests and what all that looks like, there's a few different ways, but everything revolves around those requests that are being sent up. So we can go about it for troubleshooting in a manual process by actually looking at the network requests. And that's what I had a screenshot there of 2 slides ago, where we look at the physical request. We see within the network tab of our browser all of that information broken out. Now, there are some challenges with the manual process. One, we need to know what we're filtering by. If it's a site where there's a lot of different tags, a lot of different things going on, there's going to be a lot of network requests going up. So we need to know what to filter by, and typically that's going to be by the domain of the particular platform that we're looking at. I'll show you a couple of ways that you can actually identify exactly what that domain is, so that you can then filter by that and see some of those data attributes that are being collected. There's also a number of plugins out there. I have our own Tag Explorer, which is a free plugin on the Chrome. So if you just go to the Chrome store, search for Tag Explorer, you can find that. I'll have some examples of that later. Another really popular one, very similar functionality to our Tag Explorer, is Ghostery. There you can see on a page, when you manually go to it, all the different tags that have fired on that particular page. And then a number of platforms, if you're trying to troubleshoot an implementation, or you know what it is exactly you're looking for, have platform-specific plugins that can be used. And then there's also automated tools such as Tag Inspector, Observe Point, and HubScan are 2 others in the space that you probably either heard of or will at some point in the future. So a few little tips and everything for troubleshooting tags on a website. So with the manual process, like I mentioned, you need to know exactly what, you don't know exactly, but you need to know what to filter by, so you can really simplify and find the request that you're looking for. This right here on your screen now is an example of a Site Catalyst or Adobe Analytics request. And it's structured similarly to the Google Analytics example that we had earlier. But on this particular site, sc.mtv was the domain of the request. So it filtered by that, and then you can actually look at those query string parameters. So if you're using Adobe and you're looking for a particular event to fire, you can perform that action, look in the network, and make sure that a request goes up, and you can be confident that the data is being collected. Same thing if you're looking for particular evars or other attributes, parameters to be populated, you can manually look for those different items to be populated. The second thing here, and I'll use Tag Explorer as an example with plugins. So Tag Explorer and Ghostery both, you could go to an individual page, click on the plugin, and it'll provide a full list of the different tags that are there. Now, what I will like to do a lot of times if manually troubleshooting is using a plugin, such as Tag Explorer, you can click on the individual tag and see the actual request. I will just use that to then open up the network tab, filter by the domain that I'm seeing, and then can actually see all those different data attributes that are being collected. Now, this can be also simplified with platform-specific plugins. So this right here is an example of Google Tag Assistant. which most, or I shouldn't say most, a lot of people have come across before. But for if it's a Google tool, Google Tag Assistant's great. You can see Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager, AdWords, both conversion and remarketing, and they'll actually offer suggestions and errors that they see. So you can kind of dig in and identify, hey, how can I maybe fix this? Facebook is another platform that has a really good plugin that a lot of people have used or could benefit from. Other platforms, Criteo, I know has one as well. So pretty common if you're working with and trying to troubleshoot a particular platform or particular tag. Just search around out there, see if they have a browser plugin that you can use to troubleshoot. For a full site scope, that's where a lot of these automated tools will come in. These are obviously examples from Tag Inspector, but with automated tools, you're able to, with a crawl or with other technology, actually be able to, at a whole site level, see the different tags that are firing, identify exactly how they're firing, see what coverage looks like, see any gaps in coverage. So we'll talk here in a second about like auditing. If you're auditing a site, highly recommend using an automated tool to be able to see the whole thing and save significant time and effort over trying to go through manually page by page and troubleshoot or really dig up and identify any gaps. So that brings us to tag audits in general. And what we're talking about here, you can see here another screenshot from Tag Inspector. Being able to audit the site, get a really good grasp of what's going on, what platforms are being used, how are those different platforms loading. You can go through, and even if you're manually checking, go to a particular page, see that those data attributes that are being collected within each platform. How I really like to think about tag audits is 3 different goals. So the tag audit is to really see what that current state is. What is the layout? What does the playing field look like? Tags present, loading behavior, data collected, so that we can then start to identify those different gaps and areas for improvement. So what new tools can we use? What old tools are still sitting there on the site that need to be removed? Where are the gaps in collection? Are we collecting a ton of acquisition information, but not a whole lot of behavioral information on the site? So how are people actually interacting with the site? Is there not much of an emphasis there? And then trying to align that with the needs of the business. So what are the different marketing KPIs that you guys have? How can some of those things be addressed better, potentially with another platform in use? Is the main goal for next year really a huge focus on acquisition? Okay, well, what are we doing to track different sources of traffic? What type of acquisition, what type of conversions we're getting from the platforms we're using? Are some things maybe being misattributed because their tracking pixels don't have full coverage on the site, and they should? You can really start to identify issues like that with the tag audit, and then identifying that future state and using this to really fuel that conversation and fuel the strategy behind how do we get from where we are now to where we need to be. Here's just a quick screenshot of a very simple audit. So what this would be is just listing out all the different tags that are there, categorizing them. We have a lot of advertising, a lot of analytics. What are the subcategories? What is each doing? Identifying what the initiating tag is. So exactly how is it loading? Are all these things that we're directly working with, or is it maybe a partner of ours that are using a lot of these? And are we comfortable with that? We have to keep in mind that it's not only about, how can we enhance our marketing or advertising or better track things on the site, but the site also needs to be secure, and our users need to be safe, no data leakage, no unauthorized third parties. And this can really help identify that. We can also see some average latency figures for performance purposes, and then what does coverage look like with these different platforms. Once we have that really good idea of what's going on, so that current state, and so we can really then start making those different strategy decisions and create what should be here, what shouldn't be here, what should be collected, what shouldn't be, and how do these different things need to play together within the same ecosystem. And that's where the creation of a tag governance policy or a tag policy comes into play. We recently did a separate webinar focused solely on the tag governance policy because it can be very in-depth. But essentially what I'm talking about is just a list of allowed, not allowed, required tags. What are the requirements for each tag? What type of data should be collected? Where should it be? If there are sensitive areas of a site, should everything be there? Do we need to have a advertising pixel potentially on account pages, things like that? And then also the documentation for each tag. This becomes really, really helpful once you reach that calm state that we're all trying to get to when it comes to tag management, to be able to, as soon as an issue arises, because something always will, having that documentation and those requirements for each individual tag to be able to refer back to, so it's not a scramble to try to run through everyone within the business to see what's going on and what should be going on. We already have the remedy, and we already have what needs to happen moving forward. For the format of a tag governance policy, I always like to put forth what are the tag requirements, but also what are the standards for new tags. When we have an intake and we have an approval process, what are the different business units that new platform, that new tag needs to go through? How does it need to be evaluated? Legal need to look at it. Security need to look at it. Performance need to look at it. What does that process look like? And then also from a documentation standpoint, what data is being collected? How exactly does that look? Where should this tag be? Again, so we know moving forward, and we can monitor against that. So information to include, I could just mention location of the tag, data collected, how it should be deployed, how it should be loaded, and then also that implementation documentation in case anything changes in the future. As far as how we're getting there, so the process for creating that policy, it's everything that we've already talked about to this point. Getting a tag inventory, a list of tags, putting together the business requirements, having legal and security review those different current tags that are already on there and review the process, and then also putting a process in place for those new tag additions and for approval. So we need all of that in place to be able to really support the overall tag architecture. Next, and a natural offshoot once you start really digging into the different tags, if you haven't already, when exactly to migrate to a tag management system and how to do that. I always tell people the best time to migrate to a tag management system was actually yesterday. It's a ton of advantage for utilizing a tag management system when it comes to not only agility, not only data collection and being able to leverage a central data layer structure, and which helps with integration efforts on the back end, but also from the control and the compliance and governance perspective. So there's many solutions out there. Obviously, the largest ones in Citon, Telium, Google Tag Manager, DTM from Adobe, and Signal. But a lot of the reasons for why to do this, like I had mentioned, take load off the developers, which is great from one side of the coin, kind of scary a lot of times from the IT and from the development areas, just because it democratizes a lot of that work. And that's why the policy is so important. The biggest pushback that will always come from IT and from development is no longer secure. we're losing control of what's going on the site, which is a 100% valid concern. But if you can already have that policy and do the legwork to identify what's going on, to be able to take that to that other side of the business, we'll go to extreme lengths to showing, okay, this has already been thought through. This is the process. We do, in fact, review these tags, but then it's just the pure benefit of being able to save time, troubleshoot issues, and do more high-level and really technical implementations for that some platforms require, as opposed to taking time to do, all the mundane things, setting up, Facebook tags or template tags, and testing a lot of those different things. Like I mentioned, governance considerations. There's a lot of governance functionality that is already built into a lot of these different tag management systems, both with access controls, who can publish, things like that, as well as some specific governance functionality built into some of these. So it can help significantly with controlling what's on there, what's not on there. And if you're working with a partner and all of a sudden they start loading in and piggybacking other platforms and loading on your site, it's so much faster, so much quicker to just be able to remove a tag from a tag management system, which takes minutes, as opposed to getting in a request in for the next release cycle, IT having to go through, remove it from staging, push it to production, test everything, which can take weeks. Which just highlights that last point for agility. Being able to add new tags, remove tags, adjust tags, using the central data layer. If some data attribute changes, being able to have so many different options for being able to get that data that you need and getting it quickly. A key point for migrating to a tag management system, because you don't want to have to go through the process multiple times, is putting together that migration plan. So you already have done the legwork. You already have an audit complete. And part of that, like I mentioned, is identifying that initiating tag. So exactly where is this particular platform loading from? That's going to inform that migration plan. So what's quick and easy to move over? What is going to take more time? What is relying on data from some other source? Is that what is needed to be collected? Are those data points already contained within the data layer? Do they need to be added? We can go through and using the information already acquired and already figured out within that audit to create that migration plan, create a timeline, and some realistic expectations for exactly how long some of these different pieces are going to take, and exactly how we're going to go about doing that. Some tips for migrating to a tag management system. We've helped a number of clients do this. Number one, leverage the central data layer. Every tag management system in one way or another, be it GTM's data layer, be it a different data object on a page leveraged by DTM, be it the UTag object with Telium. There's that central data layer where we can place everything, all the data points that are needed from a page, place them, get them into that data layer so that all the different tags and all the platforms that are being managed and controlled and fired through the tag management system can just directly pull the information from there. A few offshoots of this. One, you have a unique data structure across all platforms. So when you're wanting to starting to combine, say, the conversion information that you have within Google Analytics, you want to combine that with the cost spend data that you have within your different media platforms, your Facebook, whatever you're using for display, retargeting platforms, Bing, wherever those different things live, you have the same structure for the product SKU number. You have the same transaction IDs. You have everything is the same across platforms, so you can pull it out and then much easier combine that to really get to some really deep insights about what's going on with your site and some better optimizations from there. Another tip, know the strengths and weaknesses of your tool. Depending upon what the need is, there might be a different tag management tool or a different tag management system that's best for one person as opposed to another. Some of the tag management systems only load asynchronous tags, for example, because they're not loading synchronously. If you're really, really reliant on something like an A/B testing tool like Optimizely, that really factors heavily, testing figures heavily into the marketing strategy. You probably don't want to use something like Google Tag Manager at this point, just because there could be some flicker issues, things like that. The third part, and this is when putting together your tag migration plan, focus on the tags that you can control. And by those, I'm meaning any tags or any pixels that are loading directly on the page source. We've gone into a number of migration projects and situations, helping clients where you get the inventory and you get the audit and it's overwhelming. There might be 60, 70 different platforms or different tags that are loading on the site. If you're trying to look at everything, and some of those are piggybacking off of 2 different platforms. One thing is loading through a social sharing widget, which is loading another data aggregation platform, which is loading something else. If you try to look at everything in aggregate like that, it's very, very difficult once you start talking to the business about what's being used, what's not being used, for them to focus on that. And they start just saying, I don't know what this is, I don't know what this is, I don't know what this is. And it ends up where they don't know what anything is on the site outside of your Adobe Analytics, Facebook Pixel, and Bing. So focus on the tags that you can control. You can take an inventory of 60, 70 tags in most cases and cut it down to 10, 15 that are actually loading from the source code. And then start looking at, okay, when there's a question, should we still be using this? Should we not still be using this? Looking at the tags that it is bringing in. If it is a security concern, if it's a potential performance situation where there's a tag that's piggybacking and loading in 8 other platforms, if they're on the fence, they're probably a pretty good candidate for removal. So focus the efforts on those that you can control, those that are loading directly on the page source or directly through a container or tag management system you're working with now. And then also when selecting and when migrating, consider the other platforms that you're using. When you go through the audit process and you work with the business, so these are critical, we can get rid of, we can consolidate our efforts across these different platforms in that one. So we can reduce that number of platforms and tags that are on the site. Consider those when selecting. Like I mentioned, if using something like Optimizely that is loading synchronously on a page, put heavier consideration into some of those tag management systems that have the capability to load tags like that within them. The ultimate goal here is to be able to control as much within that tag management system as possible to allow the flexibility and the agility that those can afford. The last piece here, we've gone through what the tags are, how exactly you can troubleshoot them, a few high-level strategies for with the tag audits, some tips for creating that tag management policy, and then migrating to a TMS. Depending on the size of the site, depending upon the complexity of the general architecture, that's a lot of effort. Like you put a lot of effort into going through all these different pieces. So coming out on that back end, there needs to be structure and there needs to be process in place to be able to maintain that moving forward. And that's where we get to ongoing monitoring. Now, it starts with obviously the full cleanup, which we've gone through, ideally. The next piece is we can't let that happen again. And that's where the tag addition and approval process. One other, I guess, kind of objection a lot of times that we'll hear for a tag management system in general is due to the democratization of who can add different platforms and pixels and tags to the site, it gets out of hand. And that's where this process comes in. Now, here's an example of something that I've put together previously to help a client with this. What it will do is this is just an implementation request document. So you can take this document, give it to your partner, give it to the marketing team, give it to all those internal teams and all the partners you're working with. Whenever a new tag or whenever a new pixel is set to be added to the site or being requested to be added to the site, you can have them fill this out, which one streamlines the process for implementation. As someone who has implemented and managed a number of tag management systems for clients, this greatly streamlines the process. So we can outline exactly what is the tag, what is the brand, who owns it internally. If we're working with a partner, what is the partner that is going to be owning this particular platform? A quick business description of the tag. So when a review process happens, we can greatly simplify that review and audit process because we immediately know how everything is being used. And then as well as, I guess, in line with that idea of an ongoing review process, we need to identify the life cycle. Too often, and the reason why there's chaos when it comes to tags and pixels on websites is because things will get added and there's always great urgency. Hey, we need this tomorrow. We need this tomorrow. We're running a campaign over the weekend. It needs to be on the site by Friday. But there's never urgency in removing it. So we need to have that defined time period. And I always recommend for clients, never have a defined time period before review of longer than a year. Technology changes so fast, even if it's a platform that you still are utilizing and plan on utilizing moving forward, they might have had an update to the tag. There might have been an update to the platform. There might be some other optimizations that you can then make. So it makes sense to go in, review that, work with the partner. What's changed? What do we need to tweak on that yearly basis at longest? The other part of this document is then also the technical specifications. So just being able to list out, okay, where is this required? Is it only on a certain section of the site? Should this tag be on every single page, only on particular landing pages? Should it be firing on that page load on a particular event? One, so that we have this for that initial setup. But then also, when we start utilizing a tool, or utilizing a process for ongoing QA and ongoing monitoring, all those specifics for what should be happening are there. We know the expected behavior. We know the required data attributes that should be being collected. So we can actually check and work against that to be able to ensure the proper behavior is actually happening moving forward. The next part of this overall process is that ongoing monitoring, so the actual ongoing QA process. One way of going about that, and a lot of people are, and it's a bear, but manually reviewing. So having a process in place to every X amount of time or just on a regular basis go through and check some of those key elements. If it's a simple site, if you're only working with a few different platforms, it might make sense to go about it this way. You can use that manual process that we discussed previously, just troubleshooting in the network tab, If you've implemented the process like I laid out for the policy and the intake and approval process, you already have the requirements for each tag. So it might be something where on a monthly basis, a member of the team or somebody just goes through, quickly hits homepage, couple key landing pages on an e-commerce site, product page, and the checkout. Check it against those requirements that you've already laid out. So are these different tags firing? Yes. I can look in the network. Are these different data attributes being collected? Yes. We're good to go. So that's one way of going about it. The second way, what I would highly recommend is going about it with an automated solution. We talked about a few of those for the QA process earlier. Same thing kind of holds true here for ongoing monitoring. Here's a screenshot of a compliance rule that you can set up within Tag Inspector. So we have, as part of that governance policy, we've defined what's allowed, what's not allowed, what's required, and then for anything that's required, the technical specifics for that. For the allowed and not allowed and required, the high level, is it there, is it not there? Are anything that shouldn't be happening, is it actually happening? Are different tags being piggybacking others in? We can create a compliance rule. We can schedule regular scans, and then just be alerted whenever something that is defined within the policy high level is being broken. So that's what an automated solution allows you to do. Set it up front whenever you're implementing a new tag, a new pixel. Set it as part of if it's a brand new platform that's being approved, set it as part of that approval process. If it's something where an enhancement to your analytics platform, a new event that's being tracked, or a new data attribute that's being collected. Set up validations as a part of that. Implement the tag, set the validation, use it even in the QA process, set it to go live, and then monitor that moving forward. The previous two slides were examples of overall compliance monitoring, but you can also use a lot of these tools. Here's an example of how Tag Inspector handles it with our new real-time capability. But you can define those data collection requirements, exactly where are certain data attributes required to be collected. The example given here is just for Google Analytics, making sure that Google Analytics is firing, that it's loading through our GTM container, that transaction revenue, transaction ID are all being collected on a confirmation page. Setting these standards, again, translating your policy and the requirements into rules, and then letting that monitoring happen in the background on an ongoing basis. Set it up. Everything has alerts baked into it. So setting up those different alerts, just being alerted when something breaks, to let an automated solution handle monitoring, so that you don't have to. So you can focus on fixing things, enhancing your capabilities, more in strategy discussions. I always like to say one thing about managing the tags. You have a great view of the landscape of the organization. You can have insights into strategy discussions and plans moving forward that are unique to someone that knows everything that's going on. You know what type of data is being collected right now. You know what platforms are in use. If you have this solid governance policy and intake policy and everything in place, you also know who's managing different things. Are some platforms performing better than others? And what is set up, in the proper manner. So for just a high-level summary, going through, like I mentioned, what tags are, how they work. I know that's one question that a lot of, especially people that are working with tags and with pixels, be it in the QA process or be it in the actual implementation process. A lot of times, marketing, advertising, media, whoever is requesting different platforms and tracking to be set up, don't necessarily understand what's going into it. Tags they're complicated, but it's not rocket science at the end of the day as well. So really understanding, no matter who it is in the organization, if it's an analyst, having a technical understanding is incredible, even for a marketer. Being able to go through, troubleshoot tags, identify some issues on your own. If you have a question about why something looks wonky in a report, having the knowledge to be able to go in, troubleshoot why exactly this is happening, to be able to then summarize that, hand it off to the implementation QA team is really invaluable. So covered those two things first, identifying, in that area of chaos, what's going on, some strategies for the tag audit. Again, that is super, super important, so you can see what's going on overall, and so you can develop that plan to optimize and to get control and management over all the different tags that you're using. The next step in that entire process is creating that governance policy. So, okay, we know where we are. We've done an audit. Where do we want to be? And what is required based upon what exactly it is that's happening on the site right now. That's where the policy comes in. Part of that discussion can then be migrating to a TMS. Went through a few different tips and strategies for doing that. And I believe we have a future webinar scheduled that's really digging into tag management systems. I know there's one on some technical specifics for how to really leverage to get the most out of a tag management system. That'll actually be led by one of our developers, but keep an eye out for that. But yeah, today went through how tips for migrating, when to migrate, and then also, even once all your tags are managed within the tag management system, that process for ongoing monitoring. It is so important to be able to keep control over everything moving forward. So with that, if there are any questions, we always like to leave around 15 minutes or so to be able to answer those. So if you have any questions at all, please drop them into the pane, and more than happy to answer them. All right. So it looks like one, in terms of even with an automated solution, identifying some of those different areas, when doing an audit, like what exactly is an issue, what is not an issue, which is a great question. And it starts with really working through the process from high to low. Is how I always like to explain it. So identifying the high level issues first, and those are coverage. Are there any gaps in tracking that we really need to take consideration for? Is it starting with your most high leverage, if you will, platforms, analytics? Something that in a lot of cases we're really investing heavily in, going into the analytics platform and going into a scan or an audit. Is my analytics tag? Do I have my analytics tagged across every single page of the site? Number one, super high level. Number two, doing that for the other different tags, different pixels, and different platforms you're working with. Just making sure that they're there. Second, working into, again, going back to some of those high leverage and really important platforms, seeing on key pages, digging into those requests and seeing what data is being collected, working with the business team to see, is there anything missing in reporting that you wish that was there? Just to be able to identify where gaps there from the data collection perspective. And then moving into the governance and security. Where are different areas where we might be vulnerable? Are there tags that are piggybacking and loading in a whole lot of other tags? And really focusing on those. One, it could be causing performance issues. Two, data leakage. If you're working with a particular platform that's piggybacking a data aggregator, they might be aggregating that information and then selling information that's being collected from your users to competitors. So it's super, super important there as well. Perfect. Okay, so it looks like that is everything. We'll stop a little bit short, get you guys back about 15 minutes of your day today. Thank you all for joining us. We do have a number of upcoming webinars coming up, spanning a lot of different topics. And all the different pieces that were covered here today, we also have written content around. And if there isn't any, there will be very, very soon. There's tag management, like an overall guide to tag management within the Tag Inspector blog area. So please, if you're really interested in one piece of what was covered today, because I know each one can really do a deep dive in. But hop on there, see if there are some of that written content is relevant and helpful. And if you still have further questions, let us know at any point. More than happy to help out. But yeah, thank you all very much. We will be sending out the slides and a recording here over the next couple of days. If there are any specific questions, again, let me know. And we'll look forward to seeing you on some of our upcoming webinars. Thanks.